The box sat on Michael Jackson's glass dining table like a curse, waiting to be opened. Inside, twisted branches, dead leaves, and a cassette tape that would play sounds no human throat should ever make. Prince had just handed it to him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and now every person in that Encino mansion, Janet, Toya, Quincy Jones, even the security standing by the door, felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. "Open it, Michael," Prince said softly, his voice carrying that dangerous edge that made grown men in the music industry nervous. "I made it especially for you." What happened in the next 7 minutes would shatter Michael Jackson's carefully constructed image and reveal a truth about the king of pop that Prince had been waiting years to expose. This isn't just another rivalry story. This is about the night Prince looked Michael Jackson in the eyes and showed him exactly who he really was underneath all the sequins, gloves, and moonwalks. If this story moves you, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear has been kept secret for 40 years. The witnesses are finally talking. The truth is finally coming out. And Prince's message from that night, it's more relevant today than ever. It was late September 1984, and Michael Jackson was riding the highest wave any entertainer had ever experienced. Thriller had just become the best-selling album in human history. He'd swept the Grammys. MTV played his videos on repeat. The world worshipped him. But there was one person who refused to bow: Prince Rogers Nelson. Purple Rain had just exploded into theaters 3 months earlier, and suddenly Prince wasn't just Michael's competitor. He was his equal, maybe even his superior in some people's eyes. Prince had done what Michael desperately wanted. He'd made a movie that was both a critical and commercial smash. He'd won an Oscar. He'd proven he could act, direct, compose, and dominate a screen the way Michael dominated a stage. And Michael couldn't stand it. Michael was obsessed with Purple Rain. Quincy Jones would later reveal. He went to a Warner Brothers screening wearing full stage costume, sequin jacket, sunglasses, the works, like he was about to accept an award. He sat in the back row and watched the whole thing, never taking his sunglasses off. 10 minutes before the end, he just stood up and walked out. That screening had wounded Michael's ego in ways people didn't understand. Here was someone who wore more makeup than he did, someone shorter than him, someone who played his own instruments, who had just accomplished what Michael had been trying to do for years: be taken seriously as a film artist. So Michael did what any competitive genius would do. He invited Prince to dinner at his family's Encino estate, not to make peace, to study him, to figure out what made Prince tick, to find his weakness. The invitation came through Quincy Jones, who knew both artists well and thought maybe, just maybe, if these two sat down face to face, they'd realize how much they actually had in common. Quincy was wrong. The Jackson family compound in Encino was a fortress of childhood dreams turned into real estate. Michael had completely redesigned it after Thriller's success. Tudor-style mansion, 32-seat movie theater, a fake candy store, and a Snow White diorama in the trophy room. It was Neverland before Neverland existed, a place where Michael could control every element of reality. The dinner was set for October 3, 1984, at 7 p.m. Michael spent the entire day preparing, changing outfits 4 times, rehearsing conversation topics, even practicing how he'd sit at the table. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to show Prince that Michael Jackson was still #1. Janet and Toya were invited as buffers. Michael rarely felt comfortable in social situations without family nearby. Toya, 28 at the time, was particularly nervous. She'd met Prince years earlier at a roller skating party where he'd shyly confessed he was madly in love with her. She'd thought he was just being polite. She didn't realize he was serious. When Prince's purple BMW pulled through the gates at exactly 7 p.m., Prince was always exactly on time. Michael watched from an upstairs window like a general surveying an approaching army. "He's here," Michael whispered to Janet. "He actually came." "Of course he came," Janet replied, adjusting her brother's collar. "Now stop being weird and just be yourself." But that was the problem. Michael Jackson hadn't been himself in so long, he didn't remember who that person was anymore. He was a persona, a brand, a carefully managed image that required constant maintenance. Prince? Prince was something else entirely. When Prince entered the Jackson compound, he wasn't wearing his Purple Rain persona. No ruffled shirt, no purple coat, no eyeliner. He walked in wearing a simple black turtleneck, black pants, and boots, looking more like a jazz musician than a pop star. His afro was perfectly shaped, his eyes sharp and assessing behind wire-frame glasses. He carried a small, wrapped box under his arm. "Michael," Prince said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, his eye contact unwavering. "Thank you for inviting me to your home." Michael's handshake was softer, more hesitant. "Prince, welcome. This is my sister Janet, and you already know Toya." Prince turned to Toya and smiled. A real smile this time, not the performer's mask. "Toya, you look beautiful, as always." Toya blushed. "Thank you, Prince. It's good to see you again." They moved to the dining room, a massive space with a table that could seat 24, though tonight only the 4 of them would eat, plus Quincy Jones, who arrived fashionably late as he always did. The tension in that room was immediate and suffocating. For the first 30 minutes, the conversation was painfully polite. Michael asked about the Purple Rain tour. Prince asked about the Thriller videos. They talked about James Brown, about Sly Stone, about the state of the music industry. Surface-level stuff. Safe topics. But beneath every word was a current of competition, of measurement, of 2 men sizing each other up like prize fighters before a match. Then Quincy Jones, trying to ease the tension, made a terrible mistake. "You know," Quincy said, pouring himself another glass of wine, "you two have more in common than you think. Both Jehovah's Witnesses as kids. Both from the Midwest. Both musical geniuses. Both changing the game. Maybe you should work together sometime." The suggestion hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Prince set down his fork slowly. "Work together," he repeated, his voice flat. "Like what? A duet?" "Why not?" Quincy continued, oblivious to the danger. "Imagine it, Prince and Michael Jackson on the same track. It would be the biggest thing in music history." Michael's smile was tight. "That would be interesting. I've actually been working on a song that might—" "No," Prince interrupted, and everyone at the table froze. "I don't think so." "Why not?" Michael asked, and there was an edge to his voice now. The performer's mask was slipping. Prince leaned back in his chair, studying Michael with an intensity that made Toya uncomfortable. When he finally spoke, his words were measured, deliberate, surgical. "Because you don't make music anymore, Michael. You make products. There's a difference." The silence that followed was deafening. "What did you just say?" Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. Prince didn't flinch. "You heard me. Thriller isn't an album. It's a marketing campaign. Every decision you make is calculated. Every move is focus grouped. Every outfit, every video, every interview is designed to sell more units. You're not an artist anymore. You're a brand." Janet gasped. Toya put her hand over her mouth. Quincy Jones looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Michael stood up, his hands shaking. "How dare you come into my home and—" "Sit down, Michael," Prince said calmly. "I'm not finished." Something in Prince's voice, the absolute certainty, the lack of fear, made Michael hesitate. Then, slowly, he sat back down. Prince continued, his voice quieter now, but no less devastating. "You want to know why I didn't show up to We Are the World? Everyone thinks I was being difficult, that I was too shy, that I was jealous of you. But that's not why I didn't come." "Then why?" Michael demanded. "Because that whole thing was about you, not about feeding hungry people in Africa. About you. About your image. About showing the world that Michael Jackson cares. But here's what I know, Michael, and here's what everyone in this industry knows but won't say to your face. You don't care about anyone but yourself." The words hit Michael like physical blows. His face was red, his eyes beginning to water behind his aviator glasses that he wore even at dinner. "That's not true," Michael said, his voice breaking. "I care about—" "You care about being loved," Prince interrupted. "That's not the same thing. You need crowds worshiping you. You need validation. You need everyone to think you're the most talented, the most special, the most magical person who ever lived. And the saddest part, You actually are talented. You actually are special. But you're so addicted to the image you've forgotten how to just be human. Prince reached for the wrapped box he'd brought and slid it across the table to Michael. I brought you a gift, Prince said. Open it. Michael stared at the box like it might explode. What is it? Open it and see. With trembling hands, Michael unwrapped the box. Inside, as witnesses would later describe, were dead leaves, twisted branches, and a cassette tape with no label. What is this? Michael asked. That, Prince said, is what fame sounds like. Put the tape in. Prince, maybe we should, Quincy began, but Prince held up a hand. Put it in, Michael. Michael carried the box to the stereo system in the corner of the dining room. He inserted the cassette tape, pressed play. What came out of the speakers made everyone in the room freeze. It was screaming, not musical screaming, anguished, desperate human screaming. The sound of someone in psychological torment. Beneath it, there were whispers, chants, words that didn't sound like any language anyone in that room recognized. Michael shut it off after 10 seconds, his face pale. What the hell is that? He whispered. Prince stood up from the table, his expression unreadable. That's a recording I made at 3 a.m. last week. I took a microphone into a hospital psychiatric ward and recorded the screams of people who had complete mental breakdowns. Then I mixed in the sounds of my own voice, chanting the names of everyone who's tried to control me, own me, or turn me into something I'm not. Record executives, managers, Warner Brothers, the press, my father. He walked over to stand next to Michael. That's what it sounds like inside your head, Michael. That's the sound of someone who's let fame devour their soul. That's what you're becoming. Michael was shaking now, tears running down his face. Why are you doing this? Why are you being so cruel? Because someone has to tell you the truth, Prince said, and for the first time that night, his voice softened. Look at you. You're 26 years old, and you live in a house with a candy store and cartoon characters. You sleep in an oxygen chamber. You're buying the Elephant Man's bones. You're changing your face. You're disappearing, Michael. The person you actually are is being erased by the image you're creating. You don't understand, Michael sobbed. You don't know what it's like to be me. You're right, Prince agreed. I don't. But I know what it's like to have the industry try to own you. To have people tell you who you should be, what you should wear, how you should act. And I know what it takes to look them all in the eye and say no. To protect the real you underneath all the performance. He picked up the box with the branches and leaves. You know what these are? These are from Paisley Park. From the trees outside my studio. I picked them myself this morning. They're dead, Michael. They fell off because it's autumn, and that's what happens in the natural cycle. They die, they fall, they return to the earth, and in spring, new leaves grow. He set the box back down on the table. But you're trying to stop the cycle. You're trying to stay young forever, stay perfect forever, stay on top forever. And it's killing you. Not the natural death of leaves in autumn. The unnatural death of someone who's trying to be something impossible. Janet Jackson, who had been silent through most of this, finally spoke up. Prince, she said firmly, I think you've said enough. But Michael held up his hand. No, let him finish. Prince looked Michael directly in the eyes. The box I gave you, the branches, the leaves, the tape. That's not a curse, Michael. It's a warning. It's a mirror. It's what you're going to become if you don't stop running from yourself. Then what do I do? Michael asked desperately. How do I stop? You start by getting out of this compound, Prince said bluntly. You stop surrounding yourself with yes-men and fans and people who treat you like you're not human. You stop making music to beat me or beat anyone else. You make music because you love it, not because you need the validation. He moved toward the door, then turned back one more time. And Michael, one more thing. That tape I gave you, there's 30 seconds of music at the very end. After all the screaming stops, listen to it when you're alone. Really listen. With that, Prince walked out of the Jackson compound got in his purple BMW, and drove away. Toya Jackson would later write in her autobiography that Michael didn't sleep that night. He took the tape up to his room and played it over and over, listening to the screams, the chants, the disturbing sounds Prince had created. But at the very end, just as Prince had promised, there was music. It was a piano melody, simple, gentle, almost childlike. And over it, Prince's voice singing words that Michael later wrote down in his diary: "When the mirrors break and the masks all fall, when the stage goes dark and there's no curtain call, when the crowds go home and the lights fade out, will you remember who you were about?" The song lasted exactly 43 seconds. Then the tape ended. According to people close to Michael, he called Prince 3 days later. They talked for 2 hours. No one knows what was said in that conversation, but after that night, their relationship changed. They never became close friends, but they stopped being enemies. And years later, when Michael was rehearsing for his final tour, director Kenny Ortega asked him why he was pushing himself so hard, despite his exhaustion. Michael's response, according to Ortega, "Because if I don't, he might give these songs to Prince." Even in his final days, Prince's words from that dinner echoed in Michael's mind. Toya Jackson, who witnessed the entire confrontation, would later describe that dinner as the most uncomfortable and most necessary conversation I ever saw. Prince wasn't trying to hurt Michael, she explained in a rare interview. He was trying to save him. He saw where my brother was heading, the isolation, the image obsession, the need for constant control, and he recognized it because he'd fought those same demons himself. The difference was Prince had the strength to say no to the industry. Michael never learned how. Quincy Jones, when asked about that dinner years later, simply said, "Sometimes the truth sounds cruel when you're not ready to hear it." Prince knew Michael wasn't ready, but he said it anyway. That takes a different kind of courage. After that dinner, Michael kept Prince's box. When he moved to Neverland Ranch in 1988, the box moved with him. He kept it in his private bedroom, away from visitors, away from staff, away from everyone. According to Michael's former security guard, Javon Beard, Michael would take out that cassette tape on bad nights, nights when the pressure of being Michael Jackson became too much. "I'd hear those screams coming from his room at 2, 3 in the morning," Beard recalled. "The first time I heard it, I almost broke down the door thinking something terrible was happening. But when I knocked, Michael just said, 'I'm okay. I'm just listening to the truth.' The leaves and branches? Michael had them preserved in resin and kept them on a shelf next to his Grammy Awards. A reminder, perhaps, of mortality, of cycles, of the natural death that fame tried to deny. When Prince died in April 2016, 1 year before Michael, he left behind thousands of unreleased songs in his vault at Paisley Park. Among them was a track that his estate found labeled simply, "For Michael." It was the full version of that 43-second piano melody from the cassette tape. Prince had recorded it properly, with full production, with additional verses, with everything he'd meant to say but couldn't that night in Encino. The full lyrics included these devastating lines: "You wore your loneliness like a sequined glove, turned your broken childhood into dancing love. But the applause can't fill the empty space inside, where the boy you used to be went to hide. I tried to tell you, but you couldn't hear." The truth sounds cruel when you're living in fear. So here's my gift wrapped up in dead autumn leaves. You're still worthy of love, even when nobody believes. The song has never been officially released. Michael's estate and Prince's estate both agreed it was too personal, too raw, too honest for public consumption. But those who've heard it say it's one of the most compassionate things Prince ever created. A brutal truth delivered with genuine love. This story isn't about a rivalry between two pop stars. It's about what happens when image becomes more important than identity, when validation becomes more necessary than truth, when the need to be loved by millions prevents you from being known by anyone. Prince saw that Michael was disappearing into his own fame, And he did something that took immense courage. He told him the truth. Not gently, not diplomatically, but honestly. That box of dead leaves and screaming voices wasn't a curse. It was a warning from someone who understood what it cost to be extraordinary. Prince had learned to protect his humanity while still being a genius. Michael never learned that lesson. And the saddest part? Michael knew Prince was right. That's why he kept that box until the day he died. That's why he listened to that tape on his worst nights. That's why, even in his final rehearsals, he was still thinking about Prince's words. The question Prince asked that night in Encino, "Will you remember who you were about?" is a question we all need to ask ourselves. Not just celebrities, all of us. When the performance ends, when the validation stops, when the crowds go home, who are you when nobody's watching? Have you protected that person? Or have you let them disappear behind the image you're creating for the world? Prince knew the answer for himself. He fought every day to stay true to the real person underneath the purple one. Michael Jackson spent his whole life running from that question, and it destroyed him. That dinner in Encino was one man trying to save another from a fate he saw coming from miles away. Michael wasn't ready to hear it, but he heard it anyway. And somewhere, in whatever place brilliant artists go when they leave this world, maybe they're finally having the conversation they should have had that night. Maybe Michael is finally ready to listen. Maybe Prince is finally being gentle. Or maybe, just maybe, they're making the music together they never got to make while they were here. Two geniuses who understood each other better than anyone else ever could. Finally free from the images, the competition, and the pressure to be anything other than themselves.